So, Chris, introduce yourself.
Sure. Chris Kokoris. I'm the CEO of uFinancial Group here in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania.
Nice. And how did uFinancial get tied in with Chairapy?
Again, great question. I think it was organic in my eyes, right? It was the fact that I had been a client and friend of yours, Tate, and that relationship grew and blossomed. And I think one morning before work, I was in here and you shared the vision of what Chairapy was all about, and I think the alignment was spot on with a lot of the things that we hold dear. Service and support of the community, and an appreciation for those that have served.
That's true. Chairapy and uFinancial, our goals and values align seamlessly. What kind of services does uFinancial offer?
Kind of everything across the board, from super complicated employee retention or retirement planning and estate planning to pretty simply helping young folks and new families save for retirement and college and protect themselves if something goes wrong.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of good services to offer.
Yeah, so kind of over the board.
How can people find you?
Pretty easily. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We just unleashed a new website. It's pretty cool. uFinancialGroup.com.
Okay.
Pretty easy to find. But pretty locatable. Google's powerful being.
It is.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, it's great working with you. And
Absolutely.
we're excited to bring out these episodes.
Police department, how can I help you?
I think I'm shot in the leg. My foot is on fire.
Somebody needs to come get my son. He stopped breathing. Please hurry.
Are you bleeding?
Can't wake him up. Move him. Okay, you've tried waking him up. You won't
I
respond.
can't tell if he's breathing or not. He's passed out in the back seat of the car.
I need you to pay attention as to where you're shot at. Take a look at it and tell me.
I'm shot in my
You shot in
leg.
your-
Okay, we have lots of help on the way, okay? Thank you.
Justin, welcome to the shop. Welcome to Chairapy. How long have you been in emergency management? How long have you been working with county?
I've been with the county since 2008.
But not always in the current role that you're in now, right?
That's correct.
You
yeah.
started off as a dispatcher and worked your way to where you're at now.
That's correct, yes.
What was dispatching like back then when you started? Is it different than what it is now?
I don't think it's a whole lot different. It's basically the same concepts. Just answering the phone, getting the information from the caller, and getting that information to the fire, police, or EMS that needs that information to make the bad day better.
Okay. One thing I like to ask people is what is your why? Why did you go into this line of work? Did you feel compelled to because you wanted to be something bigger than yourself, or what was it? What drove you there?
I gotta say, like most other people that are in the dispatch field, they started in the field as a volunteer firefighter or EMT, and much like that work, it was exciting. You get a little bit of an adrenaline rush helping somebody, while doing a job. I thought that was kind of the draw for me. But now that I'm a little bit older, it certainly is, about helping out your community even more by being prepared. But I think if anything, my perspective and my why has changed.
Okay. You think everyone's cut out to work at some sort of position in county, whether it's dispatching or emergency management? What kind of characteristics would a person have to come into?
So, because of the standard that dispatchers are required to uphold, it really isn't for everybody. There's a lot of pressure to do everything right, and I believe that's exactly what your customer, your caller deserves. So in that aspect, it's dispatching isn't for everybody. But my current role is an emergency planner. You have time to step back and do a little more analysis, so it's not as emergent because all of your actions are pre-incident.
Mm-hmm. As we were talking before we started rolling camera, I don't think the average person understands what goes into a 911 call. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, someone calls 911. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that aspect of it. I mean,
Sure, and as the level of complexity in that particular incident dictates, more and more people get involved in that call. If it's a multi-car accident on the interstate, where you're coordinating with local and state police, you're also coordinating aeromedical, several different fire agencies. It could be really involved, and obviously more than one dispatcher gets involved in that call, and there's multiple hands involved in any particular incident.
Yeah. So where does the dispatch center fall in like the continuum of emergency services? Like, because it starts with that phone call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything starts at the dispatch center, receiving that call, processing all the caller's information, dispatching the appropriate response agencies, keeping them updated with all the current information, and with big complex incidents, the dispatch center could have a pretty big role throughout that whole incident. As far as securing fill-ins for the stations, is fire transfers, and just is getting replacement units if it's a long-term incident, like the Leigh building fire in Carlisle. That they were looking for replacement units because units were on the scene for 5, 6, 7 hours.
Okay.
That
was a big fire. That's what I'm thinking of, right? That was the big multi-warehouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Structure box, yeah. When I was thinking of questions of what I could ask you, the one thing that I kept going back to was, as me, I've worked in EMS for 13 years. When I drop a patient off at the hospital, I get some level of closure. Small amount of closure, but I know the continuum of care is going to continue and they're going to make it or they're not going to make it. As a dispatcher, or working at the county, when you hang up that phone, you don't really know what happens after that. So, how do you get closure with those calls?
So I think developing those relationships with the field units are really important. Quite often, you'll have field units calling back in. The police will let us know, how a particular call turned out, or same thing with EMS. They'll let us know at their last contact what the status of the patient was. So it really is. Dispatchers are reliant on those field units to sort of let us know what's going on for that closure.
So that kind of leads me into my next question. Have you ever taken a really intense call, and when you hung up the phone, just felt completely helpless?
I think most dispatchers develop a that coping mechanism to be able to deal with that, and obviously move on to the next call, because that's your shift usually doesn't end with just that call, so you have to find a way to continue, move on.
When the phone rings, there's a problem. Now, how severe the problem is varies after every call. Loud music, fireworks. I shot my wife. So you never know what's going to happen when the phone rings.
I never stopped to think about that. Like, if you get that kind of call at the beginning of your shift, you've still got to work another 12 hours.
Sure.
You can't carry that with you.
Yeah.
You try not to.
You try not to. I mean, your coworkers are there to, you can talk with, and there's policies and procedures, in most dispatch centers that'll allow you some time to step out, and if you need to talk with somebody, you can do that. So I mean, there's ways to deal with that and be able to process that, and still be able to continue on with your shift and make a difference.
Like with our previous 4 episodes, the one common thread that we talk about is decompression and coping with emergency calls that you may deal with. Do you have anything that you particularly do to help decompress? Take your mind off of what may have taken place?
Sure. Whenever I was full time in the comm center, on my days off, I would certainly spend a lot of time out in the woods, hiking. One of my favorite things to do whenever I was younger was fly fishing with my grandfather. So I got back into doing stuff like that, and that really helped me take my mind off of my next shift or what happened during my previous shift.
Do you have any calls that may have stuck with you?
Yeah, I still have one. I mean, we all have several calls that stick with us for different reasons. But I did have one call where somebody called in and wanted to report a dead body due to suicide. And, so immediately I thought, holy cow, I need to get this call right. So I started, asking the caller, all kind of different questions, just trying to keep them on the phone because they kept trying to get off the phone. So while I was doing that, obviously, all my other teammates were getting people, moving in the right direction towards the call. And after the call ended, it was determined that the person that called in this dead body was actually the person who committed suicide. So, yeah, it was kind of sobering to think that,
You're the last person they talked to.
Yeah. And, I felt good that I tried to keep the person on the phone the whole time. But, you always wonder if you could have done a little bit more. But yeah, that's sort of my one call.
I bet that conversation, you still hear it to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that you just won't forget.
Definitely not.
And speaking to ways of coping, once the supervisor found out, exactly what happened, after the field units called back in, they took me out into the hallway and, allowed me some time to, just to talk with them and, get things under control and, pull things back together, after, receiving that kind of news. That's something that I, definitely appreciated in that moment.
One thing you kind of touched on is that there are programs in place to get help to talk to people. What does county have in place for those kind of situations? Yeah,
so one of our dispatchers started a peer support team, and almost like a CISM, a critical incident stress management team.
Emergency services, we're all about the acronyms. Absolutely.
It doesn't matter, fire, police, EMS, dispatch, we're all about the acronyms. So it's a group of, peers that went out and got special training, and they're available to talk with any first responder that is, having trouble. And it's all about suicide prevention and coping with those difficult calls. As a dispatcher, you're almost a partial therapist, trying to distract them while trying to get the best information.
Now you're tapping into a little bit about what we do here.
Absolutely.
A little bit of therapy.
Sure, absolutely. I mean,
never thought about dispatching on that side of.
And that's that's something that's not necessarily taught. That's developed. Although we do talk about it in training, but there's no necessarily specific skills. Other than you want to. One of the things that they do teach you is to eliminate the pauses. You always want to keep talking to your caller to keep them engaged and to keep their mind off of the situation at hand. Because you always want a lucid caller. They'll always provide you with the best information, and with those continual updates that the field units are asking for.
Have you ever had to talk anybody through CPR?
Actually, yeah, I am the proud recipient of a lifesaver pin.
Get out of here.
Yeah. There was a.
Well, if you don't mind, walk me through that. Because I've never had to talk someone through CPR. I'm usually the one just doing it.
So.
So that idea fascinates me.
Well, the one nice thing about it is it's completely scripted on our computer system. Although we are all required to have CPR, to be able to understand the instructions that you're giving. But yeah, it is completely scripted, and you just walk through all the processes, and you keep encouraging the caller that what they're doing is the best thing for the patient. And one of the difficult things is whenever you get a caller that calls in a cardiac arrest and they're not willing to.
Not want to do CPR.
Yeah, that they just don't want to do the CPR.
And it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just not. It's
that's
a
true. That's
thing.
true. But it's as a responder, that has done CPR, it's just heartbreaking that you just can't go through the phone yourself to do it. So that's always something to think about.
Our hero complex kicks in.
It certainly does, doesn't it?
Anybody who works in any realm of emergency services has a little bit of a hero complex. That's the reason we do it.
Exactly.
We want to be there. We want to help.
Exactly.
We want to take care of people. Do you consider dispatchers first responders? Because a lot of people look at it and go, well, no, they're not first responders. They're not on an ambulance. I look at it differently because, as we have talked about, the ball doesn't get rolling until county starts the ball rolling. So they could be looped into that. Where do you sit on that?
Sure. I think, absolutely dispatchers should be considered first responders. And you're right. Quite often they're not out there working on an ambulance, fire truck, or in a police vehicle. However, that doesn't mean during the call that they're not emotionally out on that call and emotionally invested in that call. So, for that reason alone, I believe that that dispatchers are the first responders.
They go through the same emotional roller coasters that we do. They're just not physically there.
Correct.
Which I think is harder.
Yeah, the caller is our eyes and ears, gathering that information for the field units. Mm-hmm. Quite often, we often joke about the crystal ball, but you certainly got to make some educated judgments, on certain calls for certain things. As somebody that's ridden, ambulances and fire trucks, they're definitely first responders, but also being, a dispatcher at one time, for sure, dispatchers should be considered in that realm.
Absolutely. The general public tends to forget about the dispatchers because they just call 911 and then someone shows up at their house or their car or wherever they call from. You think most people forget about that side of dispatchers? Like, someone's there to take your call, but they don't really get all the, I don't want to say glory, but they don't get the appreciation.
Sure, yeah, because, whenever somebody shows up at your doorstep to solve, your problem, in the flesh. Obviously, that's so much easier to see. And obviously the public doesn't, they don't know they need us until they actually need us. So it is a difficult position to be in. Well, not necessarily difficult, but just unusual. That something like that happens.
I was thinking of my own kind of story, anecdote that I could share with you and have you put some words in on. We were talking about good dispatchers and how they kind of anticipate what's going to unfold. There's a level of Kentucky windage, I guess you could call it, a little educated guessing. But I can remember on an instance where we had a person trying to punch the windows out of our ambulance, and before I could even key up and ask for county, they were already monitoring the situation as it unfolded, and had police already on the way. And it was one of those instances where I was so appreciative that they were on it. It's definitely saved me and my partner. And I never stopped to think about dispatchers getting burnt out. And people say, "Oh, they saw too much." No, they didn't see too much. They heard too much.
They heard too much.
Yeah. Have you ever been out in your normal travel day-to-day life and had to switch into dispatcher mode? Like you've come up on something or an incident, you've had to kind of change gears and put on your dispatcher hat?
Yeah. I just left work. I worked till 11 p.m. and needed to stop at Sheetz for gas, which was a little out of my normal routine, because usually, when you leave work, you just want to get right home. But I had to stop for gas, and I made that last turn to go home, and I find a plane down, right in the middle of the roadway.
You drove up on a plane crash.
I drove up on a plane crash.
First one there.
First one there.
Happening right now, the FAA is investigating last night's plane crash near Carlisle. It came down in the intersection of West Hunter Road and East Forge Road in South Middleton Township. Our Cumberland County reporter Matt Barcaro has more.
This is what a hard landing looks like. The Federal Aviation Administration says this plane was headed here to the Carlisle airport, but the pilot told people who came to help him last night that he ran out of gas, and that intersection a few blocks from here was as far as he could get.
What was kind of odd, it was real eerie. It was a little bit of fog in the air. There were no street lights. Nobody had come out yet.
Just a random plane.
Just a random plane in the middle of the road, and I got out. I called it in, and gave them the street and the cross street, and let them know that the pilot was still alive.
He ran out to help, but instead of finding a car there, he found this airplane nose down in the middle of the street. Other neighbors ran over to help the pilot, who they said was bleeding from the head and didn't even know what state he landed in.
The only thing I could think was the airport's so close, he might have been trying to get to the airport and just came up a little short.
Because of his injuries, the pilot was first taken to Carlisle Regional Medical Center, then flown to Penn State Hershey Medical Center.
But it was, it was kind of eerie, and that's the first time I ever really had the perspective of the public.
What we see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the perspective of the public in whenever they call till the time that the emergency responders get there was huge.
Doesn't it seem like 30, 45 minutes from the time you hang up with 911 to
Absolutely.
the time they get there?
And that was my first real experience with, seeing what the public sees and how, what their perspective is, because it did seem like forever till anybody got on scene. But, the reality of it was maybe 3-4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But that 3 or 4 minutes seemed, like forever.
Oh yeah.
But it was not every day do you leave work and roll up on a plane down. And I gotta give it to that pilot. He put it in the roadway, and the biggest amount of damage that he did is he scraped up the pavement, and he put a few scrapes on the utility pole that that his wing clipped, but he could have put that down in a much worse place.
Investigators with the FAA looked over the plane at Carlisle Airport where it's being stored. It clipped some trees on the way down, but avoided hitting anything else.
I don't know if it was luck or skill, but he fished it through all those wires and did pretty well.
Public, whenever you call in, yeah, we do understand that you're having your worst day, but we do have certain protocols that we have to follow, and there are questions that that we do have to ask you. Just know that there are other people, working on getting fire, police, EMS dispatched out to help you.
You said this in the beginning.
Absolutely.
It's a team.
It is absolutely.
I never thought about that until you phrased it earlier, that it's a team. This is a team effort. It's a team sport. A lot of people don't think that.
Yeah, you're right. For 99%, well, maybe not that high, but for the overwhelming majority of the calls, yeah, it takes one caller and one dispatcher to make something happen. But as the incident increases in intensity and complexity, more and more people get involved in that call.
The thing about being a dispatcher is, of course, we're not there. When someone calls and she's telling me what she sees, then I'm visualizing what she sees. I don't know if we visualize the reality of it or we visualize something way worse. The story just kind of ends there where the call ends.